Good afternoon. It's 1 o'clock, 1:09 p.m. It's Friday, October 20th. This is going to be a shorter video. I'm not prepared to do the next uh, verse in the Beatitudes. Hopefully we'll have that tomorrow. I've been running around today getting ready for our weekend revival here at Granville Center, Church of Christ. Uh, but I did want to stop and take a moment to share a couple of thoughts on something. I went to a graduation ceremony up at New Beginnings. It's a live-in drug rehab center just up the road here that I volunteer at. And whenever a guy completes the program, we have a graduation, and we enjoy that time. And I've been up there for that. And as I listened to the various people share and listen to his testimony, it got me thinking about some things that I've actually already been thinking about on my own. As I've been memorizing scripture at work, I'm a door greeter, so I have 7 to 8 hours a day where I just stand there and basically do nothing except talk to people. And sometimes there's downtime. So what I've been doing is trying to utilize that to memorize scripture. I have a little notebook I keep in my vest, and at the start of the shift, I'll write down a passage, just a couple of verses, something short, something manageable. And then for the next 7 to 8 hours, whenever I have a moment, I'll sit there and read it and try to commit it to memory. And so far, I've done this 3 times. I've committed 3 short passages, familiar passages to memory. And the last one that I was working on was just yesterday, is Romans 12, 1 and 2. And that got me to thinking about how I interact with culture and interact with different media. And that's one of the things that I've been wanting to do on my blog, and one of the things I want to do with these videos and hopefully the podcast that'll evolve out of this. And I was listening to this fella explain how he was really big into horror movies, and he was really big into a lot of different rappers. And he said that stuff had a negative impact on him. And I could relate on a personal level, because I know that in the past there have been movies and TV shows and music that I listened to that had a negative impact on me as well. Now, mind you, there have been movies and TV shows and books and all that have positive impacts on me. And I'm not sitting here this afternoon with the intention of telling people that you can't listen to secular music or watch secular movies, because I believe that's a personal conviction. But I do believe there are certain areas that as Christians we would do well to be wary of and stay away from. And as I was memorizing Romans 12, 1 and 2 last night, and listening to this young man explain how he had fought with those temptations, I really got to thinking about this idea of being a living sacrifice and giving away those things in my life and just giving them to God and letting go of them. And Paul actually says, we should do that with God's mercies, his great mercy in sight or in view. And we should let these things go so that they'll be pleasing and acceptable to God. And he actually says that's what true worship is to give of ourselves and surrender and sacrifice these things to God. And let's just be honest, it's a daily basis. It's a daily battle. We have to let go of these things. And that verse also goes on to say in verse 2, it says, don't be conformed to this age. And it says, be transformed by the renewing of your minds. And I think that comes about through diligent study of the Bible, memorizing of Scripture, which is one of the reasons I've decided to make this an active part of my life. Spending time in prayer, spending time in devotion, whether you're reading through a devotional book or listening to sermons, and spending time around other believers and being part of that group that can encourage and edify and strengthen one another. And it really, it's kind of interesting the way all these things come together at one point. I had no clue that this is what was going to be said at this graduation last night or this morning. And I definitely wasn't thinking about it last night when I was memorizing Romans 12, 1 and 2, because I just found out about the graduation this morning. So it was like God worked all those things together independently of one another. And it also came about as I've been reading through the book of Philippians on my own with several different things. I thought about Philippians 4, beginning in verse 8, it says, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any moral excellence, and if anything praiseworthy, dwell on these things. Do what you have learned and received and heard from me and seen in me, and the God of peace will be with you. So Paul is saying that we as Christians, we really need to focus on positive things. And once again, I'm not saying all secular music, all secular television, all secular movies, books, media, entertainment. I'm not saying all that stuff is bad. There is some really, really good stuff out there. But just speaking on a totally personal level, and this is just me sharing my life and who I am. When I look back at a lot of the things I used to listen to, a lot of the things I used to watch, they weren't very wholesome and they weren't very pure. I used to love horror movies, slasher movies, the Friday the 13th and the Halloweens and things like that. And as I get older, and hopefully as I'm growing closer to Christ, the things that used to amuse me and entertain me don't amuse me and entertain me any longer. And part of it may be because I'm getting physically older. I'm a grandfather now. I have a grandson. My children are getting older. But I didn't stop listening to certain types of music and didn't stop watching certain kind of movies when I became a father. In fact, one of the big jokes in our family, Jeffrey, my oldest son, is 21, but we still joke in our family that I let him watch Scream when he was 3 years old. And that still is a source of contention in our household, although it's loving and it's playful now. And the truth is I really didn't let him watch Scream when he was 3. He just happened to be in the room while I was watching it. But I've noticed that when these types of movies are on, and perhaps I'm in the room or they're on television, and I sit down and I attempt to watch one, the things that used to entertain me, the things that I used to find amusing or interesting in these types of movies just aren't very interesting. They don't amuse me, and quite simply, they're not very entertaining anymore. In fact, put this into practice just recently. We had a Friday the 13th, and Christopher, my 16-year-old, we got the idea, well, we'll watch some of the Friday the 13th movies on Friday the 13th. And as we watched some of them, as we were going through them, I just realized I don't like these movies very much anymore. I didn't enjoy them. And perhaps part of it may be because I've seen them so many times. There's nothing there. Whatever element of surprise or shock that once may have been there is totally gone. But I found that I just did not enjoy watching someone walk around and just kill people. It wasn't entertaining. It wasn't amusing. And I didn't enjoy it at all. And I would like to think that's because that God has taken some of that stuff and making me not like it very much anymore. I'm trying to focus on things that are positive and wholesome and pure. And I'm not just picking on Friday the 13th. I mean, you could probably argue, even from a non-Christian viewpoint, those aren't very good movies and they're not very enjoyable. The critics always hated them. There's not a lot of storytelling. There is just gratuitous violence and sexuality and that stuff. So even coming from a non-Christian viewpoint, they probably weren't the best movies in the first place. And honestly, as I look back at it, I honestly don't know why I enjoyed them so much in the first place, but I know that I don't enjoy them like I used to. And a lot of the music I used to listen to, I was a child of the 70s and 80s. During the 80s, when all the hair metal and all that stuff was going on, that was my favorite type of music. And musically, I still like a lot of it, but occasionally I'll get the hankering to listen to something I used to listen to when I was 15 or 16 years old. And even though the music is still kind of cool, even though it's a little cheesy, as I listen to it, I listen to some of the things they're singing about. It's just like, I don't know why I like this. And quite honestly, a lot of the things that I used to enjoy, I just don't enjoy anymore. And I'm not perfect. I'm not even consistent in this, because there are things that I do enjoy and I do watch that I probably shouldn't, that are probably just as bad or just as negative as the things that I just mentioned. I'm just picking specific things that I realize that I just don't appreciate or enjoy the way I used to. And perhaps as I mature and grow even closer to Christ, as I get older and older and fill my head with more pure things and focus more on heavenly things and things of that nature, and I daily make myself a sacrifice, perhaps God will remove a lot of that stuff. Maybe he'll remove all of it one day. I don't know. But that's just kind of what I had on my mind this afternoon. Uh, I try to be open. I try to be transparent here, maybe to a fault. Maybe I share some things that maybe I probably shouldn't share, but that's who I am. And I know other people struggle with these things. And if you can hear me, a minister or a preacher, saying, look, I struggle with these things too. I'm not perfect. I don't always have it. That does make some people very uncomfortable, but hopefully it will encourage you and lift you up and know that you're not alone, and that I believe God is doing this work in me on a personal level, and I believe He'll do it with you. Uh, so that's kind of what I wanted to share this afternoon. I will close. I'm going to read that passage from Philippians once more. It says, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there's any moral excellence, and if there's anything praiseworthy, dwell on these things. Do what you have learned and received and heard from me and seen in me, and the God of peace will be with you. That's our challenge. That's our prayer, is to draw closer to God. God says if we draw closer to Him, He will draw closer to us. He'll sanctify us. He'll take a lot of these things out of us. He's already justified us and saved us. And if we'll just strive after Him and surrender all aspects of our lives to Him, He'll make us more like Him. May our God give you grace and peace, and may you have a beautiful day.